This episode of Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is made possible thanks to support from listeners like you. So if you enjoy the show and want it to continue, please support us on Patreon over at patreon.com/geeks or via PayPal over at geeksguideshow.com/crowdfunding. And I want to give a special thank you to Dave Baxter, who just signed up this week to support us on Patreon. So big thanks again to everyone who's contributed. We really appreciate it. All right, so now let's get to our show. Hello, and welcome to episode 566 of Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. I'm David Barr Kirtley, author of the book Save Me, Please, and Other Stories. Publishers Weekly says, visceral settings and robust characters will have readers marveling at how much Kirtley is able to fit into a limited page count. For SFF fans with no time to sink into a doorstopper, these concentrated doses of genre goodness will hit the spot. And Kirkus Reviews writes, Kirtley employs sharp, concise prose that complements his puckish sense of humor. The author's passionate voice breathes life into this wonderful array of tales. So again, the book is called Save Me, Please, and Other Stories, and it's available now on Amazon.com. And today on the show, we'll be discussing Season 1 of the Amazon Prime series Fallout, based on the popular series of post-apocalyptic video games. And this will include spoilers for everything in Season 1, so just be aware of that. And I'm joined by 3 guests. So first up, we've got our producer, John Joseph Adams. He's the editor of Lightspeed Magazine and the series editor of The Best American Science Fiction and Fantasy, and he's also edited more than 40 other anthologies, including Wastelands, Stories of the Apocalypse Triptych, and Press Start to Play. His most recent projects are the Amazon Original Stories collection The Far Reaches, and Out There Screaming, an anthology of new black horror, which he edited with Jordan Peele. So, John, welcome back.
Always good to be here.
The next up, we've got Teresa DeLucci, making her 18th appearance on the show. She reviews books, TV, and video games for Den of Geek and Tor.com, and her short fiction appears in Strange Horizons, Weird Horror, and Lightspeed. Her short story Cavity will appear in the upcoming Ellen Datlow anthology Fears, Tales of Psychological Horror. So, Teresa, welcome to the show.
Howdy, thanks for having me back.
And also joining us today is Zach Chapman, making his 15th appearance on the show. His short fiction appears in Nature, Tales to Terrify, and Writers of the Future. And he's also the creator of the comic book series House of Blood and The Spellslinger, and co-creator of the comic book series A Haunting on Mars. His latest comic book series, Kaiju Blues, is currently in pre-launch on Kickstarter. So, Zach, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
Okay, so let's start off with Zach, and have you tell us about your history playing Fallout.
So I don't have a super significant history playing Fallout, but I was a big Bethesda fan. I was a big Elder Scrolls fan when I was in high school. And then when I was a freshman in college, Fallout 3 came out. And that was the game after, I believe it was the game after Oblivion, which I was just like, I would stay up all night in high school playing Oblivion. With the, acting like I was asleep, but playing Oblivion. And this was kind of they purchased or licensed, the Fallout series, and they did Fallout 3 pretty much as a first person shooter, not a CRPG. And so that's my experience of the game is not like a computer RPG, but, kind of like a tactical first-person shooter, if that makes sense. They had this whole VAT system, which like slows down, pauses time, and you can shoot different body parts. So it is like a first-person shooter, but it is also a little bit tactical, and it is an RPG. And man, I played, at the time, and this has been over a decade, but 100 hours more. I played all the DLCs, like got the Zeta Alien DLC, got the Fall of Anchorage DLC. Played
Those are
all
both
of
so
that.
good. Oh my god!
Yeah, I was like totally obsessed. In fact, I think this kind of goes full circle into like my obsession with Geek's Guide, because I was obsessed with Fallout, and then I got obsessed with, post-apocalyptic stuff. Then I picked up John Joseph Adams' Wastelands, the first book, and read all of that and loved that. And then I was like, at that point, years had passed, a couple years had passed. I was doing one of my first major jobs, and, just kind of doing data entry and listening to podcasts. Was like, oh, that was kind of new. And so I was like, what is John Joseph Adams doing on podcasts? And then that's how I became a fan. Kind of, it's because a little bit because of my obsession with Fallout 3. I did play New Vegas, but and I know New Vegas is kind of supposed to be a better game, but I played it on launch and it was really broken on launch. I remember it crashing like 3 or 4 times, like within the first like 6 or 7 hours that I was playing. So I didn't have the greatest experience. I know it got patched and it's probably been fixed since then. And I played a little bit of 4 and a little bit of 76. And now, having watched the show,
everybody's played a little bit of 76.
I'm definitely I'm definitely going to go back and play 4. Not so much.
Definitely
76.
go back and play New Vegas, because New Vegas is fucking dope.
Cool. Yeah, I will.
It works now.
Yeah.
Especially after, man, this series is like one huge advertisement for the game.
Oh, yeah.
That's really cool, though, that it sounds like we owe a lot to Fallout 3 for bringing Zach into all our lives.
We actually owe Fallout, the series, even more, because it kind of, it fostered my interest in post-apocalyptic fiction, which led me to find books and stories about it. And that's what sort of led me. In a lot of ways, Fallout is why I'm an editor, because, or at least why I have an anthology career, because, my first anthology was Wastelands. And, I don't know that Wastelands would have happened if not for Fallout. It's hugely influential to me.
Wow. So how about Teresa? Do you owe your whole career to Fallout in any way?
No, I'd say I'm more of a Red Dead Redemption kind of person. But, I played Fallout 3 a little bit, like when it first came out, and admit that I was totally overwhelmed by the heads-up display and the map and could not figure out where the hell I was going. So I got very frustrated until I played Skyrim and then kind of understood, oh, that's how this works. So, because I came definitely from like the Rockstar kind of game with the in-game map and everything. But I remember being really drawn to the vaults. Liam Neeson did voice acting in the third game. And that's the kind of, he's the one who kind of like welcomes you to the vault and your character
He's the
creation.
father. He's the father in the vault overseer.
Gotcha.
Yes. So, really like that. And then I've been meaning to play New Vegas, but now that the show has come out and I hear they're doing remasters of the games.
Oh,
yay.
Yeah. Now I want to go back and play New Vegas properly, with better understanding.
And then John, tell us about your extensive history.
Yeah, I was going to say I did a sort of brief. I alluded briefly to my history, but it's like, okay, everybody else is establishing their bona fides. I got to get in here, and because I'm an OG Fallout player. Okay, so even before Fallout, there was a game called Wasteland, which is actually where I got the name for Wastelands from. So Wasteland was made by Brian Fargo. Fallout was also created by Brian Fargo. So really it's Brian Fargo's fault that I'm here. So Wasteland was a classic RPG, classic computer RPG, and it wasn't like Fallout, but it was just straight up post-apocalyptic game, and it was pretty dope. But then they wanted to make a sequel to it. They couldn't get the rights to it, so Brian Fargo ended up making Fallout. And so I played Fallout 1, Fallout 2, and then like years and years went by. And then when Fallout 3 came out, I played that, and I played New Vegas, and I played Fallout 4. I did not play Fallout 76 just because, I wasn't really into the like MMO part of it or whatever. And it didn't sound like it had like NPCs and was like there was quests and stuff as much. now I guess there is that. So I was thinking about going back and playing some of it, especially because a bunch of people on the Discord server I'm on are talking about playing it, and like, so at least it's like, hey, there's people I know that are playing it. But you know, as we talked about on the Baldur's Gate 3 panel, I do get a little bit obsessed with video games, and that was certainly true with all of the Fallout games. So you know, I was very resistant to the first person shooter aspect of it when I first saw that Fallout 3 was coming out, because Fallout 1 and 2 are you know, like isometric view, and like, I mean, they seem like perfectly good that way. And like, I had even gone back and played I think Fallout 1. I replayed Fallout 1 like after I played Fallout 3. And so it was like years and years later where it's like, okay, this is clearly like not up to snuff in terms of graphics and stuff, but it's like, it still worked well enough. So yeah, anyway, I mean, it just, it was just all the lore and the great post-apocalyptic elements to it that just really resonated with me. And, you know, like I said, it set me off on this career.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I mean, I played Wastelands as a kid. I mean, one of my friends had it, so I didn't play it that much, but you know, it was definitely a formative influence on me. And then I had played the Fallout demo when it came out, so it was like the vault and creating a character and going to it was the first town in the game, basically, and then the game ended. So, and then I never played any of the other ones. I've watched reviews of them and stuff, so I kind of like had a vague idea of what had happened with the series since then, but I had like a fair amount of residual nostalgia for the series, just because it was such an early kind of thing that I encountered. So I was excited about the Fallout show. And then I saw this the trailer, and the trailer looked really goofy, and I was like, I don't know if this is gonna. I had a little like serious misgivings.
I'm so glad you said that, because I felt like, am I the only person that just had no interest in watching this show based off of the trailer? Like it didn't look very good to me.
I agree. And I felt like I had heard there were like production drama going on, or it felt like it got delayed a bit, which didn't give me a lot of confidence either.
Yeah,
I didn't question it. I mean, because like it looked so amazing. I mean, visually, like it looked perfect. At least the trailer I saw. I don't know if you all saw a trailer that was before a trailer I saw or something. I think I saw the first one, but you know, just the look of everything looked so good. I was like, okay, I'm in. I'm going to definitely watch it right away.
You didn't think it looked like it was just going to be over the top goofiness?
Well, I mean, it was possible that it was, but I was willing to go with it and at least try it, you know, just based on how good everything looked. And because it was like created by Jonathan Nolan. And so I figured at least the first season would be good. You know, but
well, so that's the thing. So I saw that I was excited because just any sort of video game thing that gets attention for the, you know, forum and stuff, I'm excited about. And Zach and I, and Teresa, I guess too, for some of, well, Teresa's only talked about the good video game ones, but Zach and I have, we watched like 20 or 25 video game movie adaptations. Oof. I think all of which were below 55% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think most of them well below 55% on Rotten Tomatoes. So
there's some like 8% that I actually like.
Wow.
Which one?
I am an unabashed apologist for Double Dragon.
Oh, okay.
And I also like the original Mortal Kombat, and I kind of like the original Street Fighter too.
Yeah, but just the idea, just coming from that, just the idea that now, like, I guess we were talking about a little bit on email, that you've got stuff like Arcane and The Last of Us. These are, you know, some of the best shows on TV are these video game things. Yeah. It's just
Last of Us is so good. Speaking of like post-apocalyptic shows, I mean, that's a zombie show, but still it's post-apocalyptic for sure.
Yeah.
Taking a step back and like seeing this evolution of the very first video game adaptations are some of the worst adaptations ever created. I mean, we watched Mario Bros, and it's like there's no one apologizes for that. It's just awful. And then now it's like we have like pick the last 3 shows, like the last 3 video game adaptation episodes. It's all like we will criticize these things, but it's like these are above 9 out of 10s for me. Those 3. I just really love what this golden age that we're in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was excited just because it was a video game thing, and I'll watch any video game thing, as I think I've demonstrated. But then I heard all this stuff like online about, like Todd Howard sucks. He's the head of Bethesda.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to suck because Todd Howard's involved. And I was like kind of disconnected from that whole drama. So I wasn't sure exactly what was going on with that. I have since read up on it quite a bit. But at the time I was like, okay, well, the trailer looks kind of goofy to me. And it seems like people were saying basically that like the real brains behind what made Fallout great were like earlier people like Brian Fargo and Tim Kaine and Chris Avellone and stuff, and that Todd Howard kind of swooped in and bought the rights and didn't really get the franchise and had kind of like ruined it and stuff. That was just sort of the buzz online. So I was like, I don't know if this is going to be good, but Teresa, were you going to add something there?
Oh yeah, no, just saying like I feel that's always the temperature online. I remember before The Last of Us came out, I mean, Neil Druckmann just gets so much online hate all the time from a certain very vocal faction of gamers, and they give him no grace at all. So it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, so those were kind of my go ahead, Zach.
I've heard a lot of that Todd Howard hate, like from friends of mine, and someone who came on in Fallout 3, like I guess, and then didn't really like New Vegas that much mainly because of the bugs. Like I guess I have trouble understanding like what the take is. Is that the take that like he's not OG, he doesn't get the setting, or that he changed it?
Yeah. So basically, just to run through quickly the history, and I just brushed up on this yesterday. I'm not an expert, but this is sort of what I gather, is that so you had the first two games, which were made by kind of old school RPG people, and they're, top-down isometric games, lots of stats, really hard, really good writing, really gritty. And then some of those people, and of course, it's because it's video games, the people are all like, the rights are always being passed around and people are leaving and forming new studios and everything. So even the first two games were made by largely different teams. But the old school fan contingent feels that those games were like gritty and hard and crunchy and good. And then some of those people were going to make a third Fallout game, which was actually pretty far into development, but it got canceled because the company went out of business. I think it was Interplay went out of business. And then Bethesda like outbid those people for the rights to the IP. And then they turned it into the, first person 3D game. So that's kind of like a, which sort of de-emphasizes the role-playing game aspect.
Kind of mainstreamifies it, maybe?
Yeah. Makes it more accessible, but less, challenging or whatever. So that's one aspect of it. But then there's also a feeling that they made it less gritty and sort of made it like less like a believable, coherent post-apocalyptic world, and made it more into like a goofy theme park, like post-apocalyptic theme park kind of atmosphere where you're walking around talking to all these wacky characters, and it's just sort of silly and not scary, and it doesn't really make sense. Like you never see anybody growing crops. It's like, how does any of this stuff work? And then it's like hundreds of years after the apocalypse, but it still looks like everything's all ruined and there's skeletons everywhere and stuff. And so it just doesn't seem, it's more like, it's like the post-apocalyptic stuff is just sort of like an aesthetic or a gimmick rather than, taking it seriously. And as I said, I haven't played any of these games, so I'm just repeating.
I really want to know John's stance on this, because he was OG fan and then he's played these other games, and it's like, I guess I'm not able to like pass that judgment, but like that feels a little unfair.
Yeah. I mean, that definitely feels unfair to me. I mean, I don't remember those kind of details from the original games, but I mean, like, I certainly didn't feel any kind of dissonance between, having played those original games and then playing Fallout 3. Like, I mean, I loved Fallout 3 when I played it. I mean, it really felt like Fallout to me. It was different, obviously, because it was first-person shooter, but it still had VATS, and VATS is the entire combat system for the first two games. And I mean, it was turn-based entirely, but at least it let you kind of simulate turn-based in that way. And honestly, I couldn't even play Fallout without VATS. Like I would die all the time without VATS, which is weird because I could play Skyrim, which doesn't have it, and it's like the same exact combat system.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. There's one other wrinkle to this, which is that after they made Fallout 3, after Bethesda made Fallout 3, they licensed the rights to make Fallout New Vegas to some of the people, some of the old school people, like including Chris Avellone.
Yeah.
And so there's a feeling among that contingent that Fallout New Vegas was just way better than the Bethesda games. The writing was so much better. And so, like, in a way, you have to give credit to Bethesda for, encouraging that sort of competition, I guess. But then they made Fallout 4, which even more made it more apparently just more first-person shooter and even more downplayed the RPG aspects. And then they made Fallout 76, which has a terrible reputation. I guess, like people were saying, they kind of patched it a lot, so maybe it's probably better now. But on launch, it was just excoriated like no other game. Well, I shouldn't say that because video gamers are not short on vitriol. But it was really not well received.
Boy, excoriated and vitriol in like the same sentence. Like, well done, man.
So there's just the Fallout fandom, as far as I can tell, is just incredibly fractious, and so there's just
now
a lot
fractious. Wow, man, you really bringing them all out.
Gosh, wait, let me pull up my first before I continue recording.
So I don't know. Does anyone have any reaction to any of that? Does that all sound right as far as everybody knows? That is like what the tenor of the online discussion has been?
I mean, that's what it's always felt like to me, like with my friends and everyone trying to shit on Todd Howard. But I mean, maybe I'm a basic bitch, but man, I loved Oblivion and I loved everything since then. That was like my entryway into Bethesda games. And that game is really a broken, like once you get past a certain level, because of level scaling, it's completely broken. But each game since then has like fixed their systems and they've gotten better in my opinion.
Well, that's the thing I guess I should explain too, is that these games are incredibly popular. The Bethesda games, so I mean, millions and millions and millions of copies sold, so way more popular than, by orders of magnitude than the original Fallout 1 and 2 were. So like, I guess it seems like there's this sense among like the old school fans or whatever that Bethesda, it's like Michael Bay or something. It's like, like really popular in a way that doesn't deserve to be popular.
So I blissfully managed to avoid all of the online discourse about it and never even heard about the hate for Todd Howard or anything. It was only like recently that I even knew that guy's name. So I was like, hey, I don't know. I managed to do something right there.
Yeah. So anyway, so those were my expectations going to the show. Does anyone have anything they want to add about any expectations they had going into the show?
I mean, I'm a huge Walton Goggins fan. I've loved every single thing I've seen him in, from like The Shield and Sons of Anarchy, Justified, Uncle Baby Billy, and Righteous Gemstones. Like, it was for him that it really got me curious, and wanted to check out the show for sure, because he picks really good projects. I feel like I have a lot of trust in him.
And he's absolutely incredible in this. Like,
oh my God, he's my favorite part.
Yeah. I felt bad because like I never watched Justified, and I'd heard like he was fantastic in that, and I was just like blown away by him, because it was like, I'd seen The Shield, and so like I knew him from that, but I was like, oh my God, he's so much better. He's like so good. I mean, as good as he was in The Shield, but then apparently I missed his greatest performance before this, which is supposedly Justified. So, but still,
absolutely, you should go back and watch that.
Yeah,
for sure.
But as far as expectations, I mean, I was just excited by, how good it looked, like just visually. I didn't clock the overly goofy vibe of it, I guess, or if I did, I put it out of my mind and was just trusting in Jonathan Nolan. I just kind of, it was kind of a wish and a prayer kind of situation where it's like, oh, it better be good,
Yeah, well, I guess I'll explain. So, if you don't know the video game, so sort of the hook of the games basically is that it's a post-apocalyptic story told through the lens of kind of like 50s techno-optimist, public service announcement kind of thing. So there's this really interesting contrast between the sort of corny, cheery 50s music and 50s, optimism and technology and everything. There's a contrast between that and the super dark nuclear war has destroyed the world. So there's a kind of interesting balance to that. And so I think one reason the trailer, turned me off a little bit is that it leans really heavily into the 50s stuff. And so in the actual show, you have a good balance, but in the trailer, you don't have that balance.
I think maybe that balance is just potentially like impossible to strike in like a 30-second clip or maybe like a minute and a half, because like what you're saying is like Fallout is so many of these like deeply cynical, satirical ideas with like contrast and that are very funny and weird, contrasting with like a very serious, somber, post-apocalyptic nuclear war, and conveying all of that in 30 seconds or a minute and a half. It's like, that might be impossible. So maybe that's why I was like, this looks stupid and I'm not interested in it.
I feel like I need to go watch the trailer again and just see, because like I just don't remember any of that. Like,
or maybe I like didn't even, I don't know, maybe just something's like wrong with me and I didn't even, maybe I watched like some of the trailer and I just was like, I don't know what.
No, but all of us
about the marketing. I don't know. It just turned me off.
But all three of us, had the same reaction to the trailer. It seems like so.
Maybe you all were so scarred by previous video game adaptations that you were just so cynical about it that you really keyed on every slight misstep that it made.
I think we have been overexposed to video game adaptations, and that might be some past trauma.
Yeah, and I also think for me, like Amazon Prime, I know they've had some good shows, I guess, but I can't really think of too many. For me, like the ones that stand out to me that I watched were not that great. Like I'm thinking of like stuff like Picnic at Hanging Rock, and it's like they're always trying to be the go-to for prestige TV now. And
I really love The Boys and Invincible, which are both also adaptations of geek culture things, and I think they do very well, especially Invincible. It's like it almost improves on the source material, and I think that those are both Amazon.
I haven't watched either of those. I mean, they're superhero things, so that's kind of a different,
Yeah, I haven't watched The Boys yet, although I've heard it takes that like satirical kind of tone as well. But yeah, I mean, I don't go to Prime as, my go-to for new TV shows. It'll be like Netflix or Hulu, Max, stuff like that.
Or Apple TV has been killing it. Right?
Yeah, Apple TV has been killing it lately. Like that's all the other shows that I'm watching right now. So.
Which is actually funny, speaking of Apple TV, because Apple TV has Silo on it, which has so many similarities with Fallout. It's kind of hilarious that they're both airing at the same time, and like they're only separated by like a couple of months from when they aired to when this one debuted. It's both have people living in an underground like sort of vault / silo, and are frightened about what the outside is like, and then they have to venture out into the outside for the first time and all that kind of stuff. And so it's like, it's just a lot of similarities. I mean, I think Hugh Howey was clearly influenced by Fallout when he wrote Silo.
Yeah. Well, and actually there's a talk by Tim Kaine where he talks about some of the things that he was influenced or that team was influenced by. So like Canticle for Leibowitz, The Road Warrior, stuff like that. So, these ideas of the bomb shelter and the post-apocalyptic world are, sort of the common heritage of science fiction.
And if anybody wants to go read some shit after this panel, it's like Dave just said it, Canticle for Leibowitz. If you want to read it like a novel, like go read that. It's amazing. It's like it's like probably the best post-apocalyptic novel I've ever read.
I know a really good anthology.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. There's some good anthologies out there. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, apparently the Brotherhood of Steel, their kind of whole
Mm-hmm.
ethos was sort of just directly lifted from Canonical for Leibowitz.
Yeah.
But so just to, if you haven't actually watched the show, just to set up the basic setting, it's like, yeah, we're hundreds of years after, nuclear wars destroyed the world. And so on the surface, there's, mutated monsters and survivors living in kind of, ruined, they're sort of trying to rebuild civilization. And there's people called ghouls who are somehow, they're like zombies basically, and they regenerate really fast. And then you also have these vaults underground where this company called Vault Tech had built all these vaults, and they have people living underground intending to one day rebuild civilization. And so we've got three main characters, and one of them is one of the ghouls that Teresa mentioned, and he's Cooper Howard. He used to be a TV, like a John Wayne style TV star, and now he's wandering the wastelands as a sort of violent
Badass.
cowboy kind of guy. You've got Lucy, who was raised in the vault and has never left the vault before, and she's very innocent and naive and good-natured. And then you've got Maximus, who's part of this Brotherhood of Steel, which is sort of these sort of the remnants of the U.S. military, and so they have the best weapons and equipment. They have this cool power armor stuff, and they've sort of turned into this kind of almost like monk-like religious order where they are determined to preserve civilization,
Or technology, anyway.
Yeah.
preserve preserve the old world kind of technology, I guess. So how about Teresa? What did you think of those characters? I mean, I guess we know you liked Cooper Howard.
Yes,
but
absolutely. Always love a good cowboy, especially when it's Walton Goggins. That's established. I also really enjoyed Lucy more than I was expecting to. I'm familiar with the actress who plays her, Ella Purnell from Yellow Jackets, which is a fantastic show. But she wasn't in it that super long. So it's nice to see her again. And I thought she brought a lot of humor to her performance, this wide-eyed innocence that wasn't cloying. And watching her change, I thought was really great. And watching her interact with the ghoul and then with Maximus, especially the two of them have a lot of story together. So I was most interested in those two stories. Brotherhood of Steel, maybe a little less so. But that's just me. I'm never one for power armor.
Ugh.
you're
Get
not,
out of here.
you're not into power armor?
really.
Dang,
Not-
I know another good anthology.
Why did you put her on this show? Doesn't like power armor.
The tech
Ugh.
stuff, give me a good old fashioned guns.
Well, and the power armor in this show was so fucking cool.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I mean,
it's
it is
all
cool. I think for me, it's more Maximus. Like, I'll
It's-
just get it out right there. It was
Sure.
Maximus himself who was not as
okay,
compelling.
but Teresa, don't interrupt me when I'm talking about power armor. No, it was so cool. And it was apparently all practical effects, or almost all practical.
Nice.
Like they actually built those suits, like it's not
Yeah.
CGI. And it just looks so much better than any other power armor.
For
it
fuck's
just looks
sake, they
real.
made functional Pip-Boys. Of course they built the fucking power armor. Functional Pip-Boys. Not just on their arm, they built them so that they could use them. That's crazy.
So yeah. So how about Zach? What'd you think of those? Our main
I mean,
characters?
I love all three of them. I think I think that their stories are pretty well fleshed out. I actually think maybe I like them all probably equally. But Lucy's is like it reflects at least my playing of specifically Fallout 3 and 4. It kind of reflects the player character and the progression. Like her storyline is so like the progression of a player character who in both of those games you come out of a vault and then you're kind of presented with the apocalypse, and then you change over time. Like you start getting better at the game and getting better equipment, getting better weapons, and that's like her story. I mean, that's like a very reductionist view of her story, but like it's cool that whoever wrote this, it feels like they played the games and they were like, we're not doing a direct adaptation of the games, but we're kind of like recreating the sense of like your player's progression as you become more of a badass and figure out the systems, and then also figure out like the random like episodic quest natures of these open world Bethesda games, or, you know, pre-Bethesda games, where you'll be walking around and then she'll be walking around and then she just goes into a random building and it's like, well, this is super episodic, but also kind of lends to her growing as a character and, you know, to kind of be dumb, but like getting experience points. And I just, I think that that's super cool.
Well, apparently Jonathan Nolan is a big fan of Fallout. I mean, he specifically, you know, he's a fan of the games and then specifically went looking to do this because of that. And I mean, I guess I'll just say, I thought the show was like awesome. I mean, I basically have no major complaints about it. And I think it's sort of miraculous given, you know, there's like 20 producers, there's this IP that, you know, as there's so much like conflict over, you know, I mean, it seems like, you know, it was like Bethesda had to work with, you know, there's like even 2 showrunners who are like different from Jonathan Nolan. It just seems like there were a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Seems like a lot of potential for this to go very, very wrong. And just like, I don't know how, but it ended up just being great.
This, you know what it feels like? And this might be like blasphemous to say, but it feels like Star Wars. Like it's so deep. It's so rich. There's so much random, like it's like a fucking universe that like you could just be in, and they captured that. Like they actually captured the feeling of being in another setting, like something as big as Star Wars and as expansive as Star Wars, like has been captured in this first season of a television show.
But does everyone agree that this is basically pretty close to a perfect Fallout TV show?
So let me jump in because I didn't actually comment on that yet, but I mean, like I did love it. I thought it was amazing. I do have like a lot of quibbles, as I would have for anything I watch, basically, especially for something that's based on something I love. But I mean, I loved Lucy. I thought she was great. I was not familiar with that actress, but I thought she did a wonderful job. She kind of reminds me of Emma Stone, like a lot in her, like a lot of her facial expressions and stuff. And she kind of looks like her a little bit, but I thought she was great. She did a really good job of portraying that naive character. And I love the power armor. I really liked Maximus in that storyline. I'm you know, not entirely sold on that actor, but I mean, I really liked all of that. And of course the ghoul. Although I will say in episode 2, I was like, Ghoul, you're my favorite, but if you hurt that fucking dog, right? and then he shot him, I think, but luckily the dog did not die, so I forgive him. And then he was good to the dog after that. So,
how about Teresa? Just overall, how would you rate this show as a Fallout adaptation?
Yeah, I mean, I'd give it an A. You know, having come off of The Last of Us, which is one of my most favorite game series ever, and being blown away by that, and how Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann, the game runner, mapped out that story, and how they chose to adapt and what they wanted to add and what they didn't. I really enjoyed that. But here it was like the flip side of The Last of Us, doing Apocalypse with like the satirical bite that the series had. And I think that's a harder tone to balance, right? And I think they did a fantastic job because, you know, I got to say, like, my expectations were maybe not super high for this. I'm like, oh, it looks polished, but is it going to be good? And then being like really entertained and like, oh no, we have to watch the next episode right now. Like, I can't wait anymore. I got to see what's going to happen next. Like, it was super bingeable. You know?
Yeah, I watched this in one day, and like by the time I got to episode 7 and 8, I was starting to get a little loopy, and so you know, but I wanted to know what happened so much. I was pushing through, but yeah, I watched the whole thing. You know, in one day.
This you could binge in a day. Last of Us, you would slit your wrist.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I would say 10 out of 10 adaptation for sure. And I mean, I loved it. I loved it as well. I mean, as soon as we finished watching it, Christy and I were like, well, what are we going to watch next? And I'm like, well, I mean, we could just rewatch this. And we didn't end up doing it. But I mean, I was like, we both seriously were like, yeah, we'd be up for it. We just didn't end up doing it. But
I'm seriously like, well, I could re-download Fallout 4 because it's getting, as soon as the show launched, it got next gen support and texture updates and stuff. So it's like, I know what I'm going to be doing whenever I have free time. Like that's like now on my to-do list is to go replay that.
Let me just say the only sort of misgiving I had, which was very, very minor. I mean, aside from like little quibble stuff, is that this show is super gory. It's Evil Dead level gory, and like
so are the games.
But I just feel like there's a lot of people that I would recommend this to if it weren't so gory. But given how gory it is, I'm like, I'm not sure they're going to like it for that reason.
Right.
So I feel like it's limiting the audience a little bit. What was that, Teresa?
I feel like the tone of the gore on this, though, is still so over the top. It's humorous to me.
See, they basically
maybe I'm just sick.
They basically had to do it to be like an honest Fallout adaptation, because like going back to even Fallout 1 and 2, there was a feat you could take called Bloody Mess, which just like it was very violent anyway. But if you took this Bloody Mess feat, then it's like it was just like a whole other level, and it didn't even do anything for you. It wasn't like a feat that actually helped you. It just made the game even more bloody and gory, and it was hilarious. And then like as the other games happened in the future, the more modern ones, it's like they didn't have that feat anymore, but they just continued on with the the extreme goriness. So they kind of had to have it.
So that's the only sort of or caveat I would have for people. Otherwise, I would say 100% watch this. Yeah. But that's the only thing. It's like if you're not that into, if you're like turned off by gore, this is a pretty really gory show.
Yeah, yeah. Before we get into quibbles, because I do have kind of a lot, but I wanted to mention how much I love the music.
Oh yeah,
I think the music is really good, but also the this kind of reflection of the 50s, and it comes up a lot, and they're cribbing like a ton of stuff from like actual history, which is really cool. So just things like the communist like Red Scare, and it's really it's very funny, and it's like really true to life, where the Walton Goggins character, he's an actor. Oh, and by the way, he was a war hero, which was actually pretty common in the 50s for actors. Like Audie Murphy, goes from like this celebrated war hero to like a celebrated actor. So like that was the vibe I was getting from him. But
he was described as fighting in that Anchorage battle. That is that DLC that you mentioned earlier from Fallout 3, and he wore the power armor and that and everything. And so that was cool.
And in that conversation, he actually mentions that the power armor had defects. Yeah, which is like more cribbing from history, where like the M14s or the M16s in Vietnam like had defects and caused a lot of soldiers to die. And it's like no one talked about the M16s. I mean, now it's like it's a known thing, but these flaws in like the military industrial complex, where it's like, oh well, we can just make a bunch of weapons and we do it shitty and make a bunch of money. And I think there's tones of that, and it's like those tones actually get little dialogue moments in this show that make sense with the canonical, like the in canon universe. So like the Battle of Anchorage is talking about the failing power suits, and that how they have like these like malfunctions that cause them to die, and that becomes a plot point later. But and then he also mentions they're like, oh yeah, and this is in like the scene that takes place in before the bombs get dropped. There's the Red Scare, and they're pulling out writers from his show that were communist, and it changes the storylines of the shows that he's shooting, and they're making it's like making more propaganda.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
and he comments on it. And he's like, "Oh, he was a communist, but he was such a good writer." And we know like so many of the best writers got blacklisted and had to write under pseudonyms in the 50s. So I think that cribbing from history is really cool to see. And then the way they weave it in with like the actual design of this milieu is just like perfect. It's just like a 10 out of 10.
Well, there's like a video I watched. It's the 111 Easter eggs you missed in, you know, so there's
wow.
like every prop, like literally like every prop is something
Yeah.
from one of the games, every newspaper, every gun, every
I should
piece
go
of
watch
clothing.
that. Oh yeah. I mean, I noticed a lot of them, but I'd love to see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say with the music, yeah, I thought the music was great. A bunch of the music is directly from the games,
Yeah.
like that Maybe You'll Think of Me song. That is actually literally the first thing you hear when you load up Fallout 1. And then after the song, ends, it doesn't play the whole song, but once the song stops in the game, the next thing you hear is literally War Never Changes. And I was like, holy shit, I knew both of those things were iconic in my mind as Fallout things, but I didn't remember that they were literally the first things you hear. I mean, unless they added that in retrospect, because I mean, I just loaded up the game again the other day.
That's how it's always been. Yeah.
Okay, good.
But I want to get Teresa back in here. So Teresa, anything else you want to mention?
I'm sorry, like kind of went a little all over the place a little bit. Like, just what would you like me to comment on? I'm sorry.
Well, okay. So it sounds like there's some concern about Maximus. You said that he was less, you liked him less than the other characters.
I did. I feel bad about that because I'd never seen this actor before, and I thought he was good in some aspects for Maximus, like when he was having like this internal conflict about doing the right thing, and so often he kind of chose a selfish, self-serving thing. And you could see that the wheels behind his eyes clicking, but then I felt like a lot of the time the I don't want to get too personal, but it just felt like the actor was maybe a little flat compared to, and there were a few other actors in the Brotherhood storyline that I wasn't super falling in love with. It's, it wasn't as easy for me as it was with Lucy and the Ghoul.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like though that, I mean, Lucy and Cooper were both raised in kind of normal circumstances, and Maximus was raised in this sort of military,
yes,
religious kind of brotherhood thing. So it would make sense that he's sort of weird and,
Oh yeah,
kind of-
absolutely. I mean, Lucy's weird too. Like, let's get into the cousins.
But that his lack of emotional affect, it seems like, would make sense for the character.
For me, I guess it was just feeling more invested in the Ghoul and, how his past related to his present. And then with Lucy and the mystery of the vaults and going after her father, which, when we're talking about like that 50s kind of optimism, that sheen of optimism and, the facade, really. I think having Kyle MacLachlan play Lucy's father was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Because when I see him, it's like, oh, it's good guy, wholesome Agent Cooper from Twin Peaks. It's, Charlotte's first husband on Sex and the City, who's just like waspy and a doofus. Like, how could you not like this guy with his like thumbs up and his big smile and good hair? He's a good guy.
The mayor in Portlandia.
Yeah, the mayor in Portlandia. Exactly. He's a good guy. And then to watch that progression and that mystery, holy shit, he did such a great job in that finale.
Yeah.
Like, that was amazing acting from Kyle MacLachlan. I haven't seen that side of him since, I could hardly think maybe Blue Velvet, but not even. Yeah. He was great.
And just real quick, I mean, like, how amazing was that de-aging of him when they had him show up in Cooper's timeline? Like, that looks so good.
That look really good. That looked really good. And for me, one of my favorite parts of that was, again, like how the writers, like, there were some elements that were so strong. It was like the fact that Harry mentioned to Cooper how much he loved that line that he played as the sheriff, which made Cooper hate himself for kind of saying it. And I'm like, oh, you guys like really thought of all this. So well done. Just well done.
Okay, well, so Zach and John both said they had a long list of quibbles. So let's not get into the long list of quibbles, but why don't you pick like your top one or two? What are your top one or two quibbles?
I think that there's just they're small, but there's like a long laundry list of like missing plot points that they started, and then like maybe we'll get to season 2, or maybe it doesn't matter, or I don't know. But for instance, there's like a bit in the second half about the water chip not working in Vault 31 or Vault 33. And the deal is like, if the water chip is not working, they are all going to die in like 2 weeks if the water chip is not working. And then that's just mentioned. It's just mentioned.
See, I think that was just a joke because it's a reference to the first game.
Yeah, that's from Fallout 1. Yeah. That's your first quest.
I mean, but then it doesn't get resolved. It's like all of those people are going to die. I mean,
I guess they must have found a new water chip in Vault 32 or something once the Raiders attacked or something.
Like Moldaver, like, why is she still alive? I guess, I mean, I can just get over that. Maybe she was cryogenically frozen. Whatever that.
Yeah, that was the big question for me too. Why didn't that get answered?
Yeah, and then there's a scene, and again, like Dave, I watched a lot of this deep into the night, and so I was like getting a little loopy. But there's a scene where the ghoul gets caught, and he gets brought to this guy who's like kind of like a boss. His name's Sorrel Booker. Oh, and then
he's like the president guy.
Yeah, he's like, I'm the president, and feed him to the hogs, my 2 deputies. And then he just kills these guys and then ends the scene basically. And then the next time you see the ghoul, he's like in a totally different setting, and he's like looking for Moldaver. So it just felt like, what was there an episode in between, or this scene was not like concluded properly, at least for me. He killed those guys, and then he was like maybe going to kill the president, but then, or maybe they were going to sit down and have a conversation, but then that is not shown. So you kind of can just think about maybe what happened. And I kind
that's interesting. Yeah, I do feel like toward like around episode 7, there was maybe like they were cutting stuff out for time or something.
That's exactly what my I guess to sum all of my criticism would be that, and I never ever fucking say this, but this series could have used like one more short episode between 6 and 7 and 8, somewhere in there, because there were the little things that I felt like needed a little bit more meat on the bone. Like speaking of meat, dog meat, like it seemed like there was a building towards some kind of meaningful situation or payoff, and then that goes nowhere. He's just a dog in the show, so don't get your hopes up about whatever's going on with dog meat unless that's going to be in the next season. So
I wish there was more dog meat.
Well, like my thing was I felt like the scene where Moldaver in the past convinces Cooper to spy on his wife, I felt like he would have needed a lot more convincing. Like it seems like he just agreed to do that kind of really quick and kind of randomly.
Yeah. And I was like, why would he, like, once he said no, why would he even take the device? Like, why would you keep that with you? She's like, oh, keep it. It's like, I just said no. Why would I keep this?
And there's obviously, like, there's something else there, because that's the end. He spies on her, and then we're at a birthday party where he needs money. So, like, that, which is how episode 1 starts, which is like future in the time. So it's like there's still some missing links that I feel like would have gone well in an episode, an inserted episode 7 or 8. Like what we need a little bit more. Why is he down on his luck enough to where he has to fill in at a birthday party?
I mean, some of this stuff I can accept is going to be filled in season 2. Like how to become a ghoul.
What I'm
we don't
thinking
know.
When he's going to look for his family, and
he's probably going to have the pre-war stuff throughout his whole story. I would imagine they're not gonna wrap that completely. There's gonna be a lot more of that. I would
Cool.
expect.
I hope not, because that was like really fun and exciting stuff.
I'm with you. I kind of hope not too, because it did, when I was watching it, it reminded me a little of The Man in Black in Westworld, right?
Mhm.
Where you're watching these two timelines, these characters, the past, and I'm like, what makes a character like the Ghoul or the Man in Black really interesting is that you don't know a super ton about him. Like, I feel like I kind of know enough, but you know, if you explore it too much and put too much light on all of that, it kind of takes away some of the mystique.
Yeah.
I think. But I do think, you know, there'll be more for that in season 2. And, you know, I want to go back and watch the first episode again because, yeah, I was wondering, like, so did he start speaking out against Vault-Tec? I mean, I feel like that ease that he wanted to spy on his wife didn't seem to quite come out of nowhere. He struck me as someone who was always really wary of Vault-Tec and making money off the apocalypse. Like, he didn't seem like a straight up soulless corporate shill. You know, I think
I just thought there should have been some dialogue about, you know, your wife's not who you think she is. And he's like, yes, she is. And he's like, well, if you're so certain, why don't you just listen in? Like, what do you have to be afraid? Like something like where it seems like he needed more persuasion than just that. She basically says like, I invented cold fusion, now spy on your wife. And he's kind of like, you know,
yeah.
I thought there just should have been more of a scene. There needs to be more of a scene there. Yeah. But so John, what's your top quibble?
Yeah, so like I'm not gonna quibble on editorial matters as you might expect me to, but I mean, one of my big quibbles is that the Gulper is like the big monster that we get in the show, and it's because it's like I didn't even know what that was. I had to like look it up, and when I looked it up, it's like, oh, it's from what's it called, Far Harbor DLC from Fallout 4, which apparently I did not get to, and Fallout 76, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, we're gonna get like one big monster in the first season, and it's the Gulper. Like, how about a Deathclaw? Where's all my super mutants at? Like, they went into so many locations where I was like, oh, this is where going to be the super mutants, and then they weren't. So I was kind of disappointed with that kind of stuff. I feel like they didn't throw enough stim packs around. Like, stim packs are everywhere in fucking Fallout, man. Like, you know, you gotta. You see a stim pack, you better take it. And also just like, so we did get like one shot of somebody taking a puff of jet in the beginning. So I was like, okay, good. But then it's like, you know, nobody takes Mentats. Like, you know, nobody takes any of the other drugs except for Radaway, which I liked that they did that. I don't remember how the power armor, like, animation is in the game per se, as far as like the fusion core goes. But I'm like, when Maximus's Squire like is like outside the armor and he's able to just take the core out, it's like, come on, like, talk about design flaws. That's fucking stupid as hell. Like, why would somebody else be able to take the fusion core out? Come on, guys. Like, you got to protect that shit. So those are the sort of big quibbles that come to mind. I mean, if I was like rewatching it and like, you know, doing a commentary along, like I'm sure I would have other things to say. But you know, like I said, I mean, I was very happy with the show. So, I mean, there's just like, there's like little things from being a hardcore Fallout nerd that like sort of jump out at me as like missed opportunities, or like, you know, kind of seems like that's off or something.
So you wanted more drugs, basically. Kidding.
Well, yeah, definitely. I definitely wanted more drugs. I mean, I don't know. There's something about the drugs in Fallout that are just so cool. I love that Jet like is in an inhaler, you know, you know, I don't know. They're just so omnipresent in the games that it seems like they were really lacking, not being in there more.
So the part where Thaddeus, the Squire, he drinks this like yellow liquid that turns him into a ghoul, and then he can instantly regenerate. Is that how it works in the game, or was that taking some liberty?
I don't remember. I don't actually remember that at all. I mean, I don't remember anybody actually turning into a ghoul. Maybe they did. There is a lot of ghoul stuff in like Fallout 3, I think, where like, you know, you kind of are talking to not feral ones and stuff, maybe for the first time. I don't remember if they were like that if they were ever like that in previous games, but I don't remember anybody ever actually turning into one by drinking.
It just seemed the way they set it up. I feel like more people would be doing it. It seems like the the upsides are kind of
Yeah.
good, if you're like immortal and can regenerate everything,
Yeah.
Well, except for your
Maybe
nose.
you have to look like a ghoul. Yeah.
Seems like a small price to pay for living for hundreds,
Yeah.
especially since, Cooper's
Yeah.
still pretty hot, even with no nose. So.
Yeah.
Honestly, yeah, no lies detected. It's still Walton Goggins under there.
Yeah. I can't remember if I said this in the Baldur's Gate 3 panel, but like I was thinking that between the Githyanki in Baldur's Gate 3 and then the ghoul in Fallout, like people are going to be doing all kind of crazy plastic surgery to their nose in the coming future, because they're like, hey, that ghoul is hot. Hey, that Githyanki's hot. Like, let me do some modifications to my face to look more like that. So that might be interesting.
See, how about Teresa? Do you have any quibbles that you wanted to mention?
Well, I mean, aside from Aaron Moten's affect or lack of in some of the episodes, yeah, I mean, just not being as intimately familiar with all of the Fallout universe world. For me, I guess, I feel like I still need to think a little bit about what was going on in 31, 32, and 33. I still feel like a little bit confused about what was going on between all three of those. Like, I kind of get it, but then I feel, but wait, what happened to 31? That was just, there was no 31 really. But so some of that stuff got a little confusing for me.
Yeah.
Well, so 31, there was just a bunch of cryo tanks, and it was all the like Vault Tech. It was like Bud's. It was like his training program.
I hated that guy so much. I love to hate that guy.
Yeah, that guy was the worst.
I didn't actually get on I just rewatched that episode, and so the brain on the Roomba thing is actually Bud's brain. I don't think I got that the first.
So I don't understand that part at all. If he was the head of this, program, why the fuck would he volunteer to have his brain put in that robot? And it's like he seems very unhappy. Like, it's like he was like, oh, I wish I could sleep or something. I don't know. He said something to that effect. It's like, why wouldn't he be one of the people in the fucking tanks?
I mean, it might be that because it's his thing, he has to be awake to supervise the whole time.
That was the only way. That was the
you gotta delegate that shit.
Yeah, managers delegate.
Yeah, he's all about management, right? Like, the future of the world is management. So, like, come on, bro, you gotta delegate.
But yeah, so basically, I mean, that's basically it, right? Like, he had his like management people, and then like they would like come into the other vaults and pretend that they were from a real vault, but they were actually all people frozen from the past to be in charge of everything.
So one comment I have is about Vault Tech. So in the games, Vault Tech is, depending on like how much you drill into it, they're evil just like, oh, they were just evil, or like, at best they're really inept and or like have very questionable morality to the way they operated, but generally like they're evil. But like, and then in the show, it's like, oh shit, they're gonna make it so that Vault Tech actually started the war. I don't think that was ever explicitly noted in the games. It's like, I mean, it makes sense that the way the narrative goes that they would want, it's good for business for the apocalypse to happen because like they built all these vaults and stuff. But I suspect that change was largely to do with like they didn't want to have to actually blame any particular countries for the apocalypse. So maybe it was actually a crassly commercial decision just because they want to be able to like sell the show to China. And they was like, because in the games like China basically starts the war.
Well,
although depends on who you ask, I guess.
But I also feel like from a narrative standpoint, Cooper has to find out some horrifying truth about his wife at the climax.
Yeah.
So, there has to be some way that she's, not just kind of going along with it, but she has to say something shocking, that shocks the audience with how bad it is.
And it sure did.
I do love that she drops the war never changes line. It felt like it came about at the right point in the show. I actually kind of thought like it might be literally the last line in the first season just because like we hadn't seen it before that point. But then, so she says it, and I thought it was perfect. And then like, so I guess one other quibble is like when like Cooper then says it again later, and I'm like, okay, I mean, we already heard it. It was great when she said it. When he's saying it, it's like kind of like a rerun. Like I didn't really feel like that didn't really work for me. I will also say too, like, you know, like I love dog meat in the games, in all the iterations of him. And it's like when the dog shows up, it's like, of course it's dog meat, right? But it's like the way they drop his name is just kind of fell flat for me. It's like, okay, you know, it's just like the ghoul says it one time and it's like, I don't know. It's like, where did that even come from? You know, he just decided the dog's name was dog meat. Sure. Okay. But, yeah, I don't know. It just kind of fell flat for me.
Well, I guess another thing, I didn't rewatch this episode, so maybe I'm not remembering it right, but when they first dig up Cooper, doesn't the guy say, like, if he doesn't do what we want, shoot him? And it's like, well, but shooting him has no effect, and they must know that, right? So that seems to not make any sense to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think if you shoot him enough, it would have some effect.
It just seems like they had to know that this is, you know, if he chose to fight them, this was not going to go well for them.
Yeah, yeah. And then so in the games, like, I mean, you can definitely kill ghouls. They're not like totally immortal or invincible. And I'm not clear to what point in the show, like, you would have to damage one of them to actually kill them for good. I mean, I guess the ghoul, like Cooper, does kill one of the ghouls at some point. So clearly they can be killed if enough damage is done to them. I mean, maybe only if you eat their asses. I mean, because he made some ass jerky.
All right, the thing that I wasn't clear about when we're talking ghouls, Lucy's mom.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
Why was Moldaver keeping her alive as a ghoul for so long? I mean, I understand that maybe there was some love between them as a friend, but I'm with Lucy. I don't want to see anybody like that.
Yeah.
Especially if I love them.
I also question that. And like, I kind of thought like maybe there was some suggestion that Moldaver and Lucy's mom are actually like had a romantic thing. And so that's why she didn't want to let her go. But like, regardless of what the level of love was, if you love that person and like you care about them, why in the fuck would you keep them in this state of half-life as a ghoul?
It's the cool factor. It's
not that was fucked up. That was fucked up,
and it was dumb because like as soon as Lucy entered that room there, first off, I mean, all right, so maybe that was some of my quibble with like, okay, this show is really great, and I wouldn't say anything was fumbled in the end, but it was a little like, okay, so Kyle MacLachlan's just been sitting in a bird cage for how long, and Moldaver's not going to find other ways to torture him. It seems like there's lots of great tech for torturing information out of people. But then, like, as soon as you saw the ghoul tied to the chair, I'm like, oh, that's Lucy's mom. They never found the body, right? So I'm like, that's her. So like, how did?
Well, I see. I think the way I would read it is that it was all Moldaver's plan to have Lucy come. Like, she knew that the only way she could get the information was if Lucy wanted her dad to give it up. So that was kind of her plan for getting the information. And maybe she wanted to give Lucy a chance to say goodbye to her mom. And so that's why she was kind of keeping her around.
But I mean, she had, I mean, how long was this plan in like, you know, in the planning stages? Like, she had to keep that woman as a ghoul for a long fucking time.
And honestly, it could have been any ghoul that like, oh, she has the same necklace as my mom. Oh, obviously it's my mom.
It's just some random ghoul and she put the necklace on her. That would be hilarious.
I mean, she was kind of duplicitous. You never know, but.
Dave, I have John, I have a question for you. Like,
yes.
Because you're a fan of the series, were you kind of like taken aback or like, oh yeah, when you found out that Moldaver was like in charge of the New California Republic?
Oh,
like, I was like, oh, that's cool. It was like it was like 1:30 in the morning. I was like, oh yeah.
No, I thought that was cool. Yeah, for sure. And like, it felt like I think Fallout New Vegas is where the New California Republic was sort of most present in the game. And so like, and because I love that game the most, like that was really cool to see it like so heavily like in the end game part of the show. And yeah, it was totally cool to have her end up being in charge. Although it did make me kind of wonder, like, what was that dude supposed to be president of?
Yeah,
like,
I immediately was like, I mean, that guy's not. He's not a president. Yeah, he's just a guy with.
I mean, he was sitting in this like little fucking hovel, like with a bunch of dumbass deputies.
Yeah,
like,
he's like, I'm a heavy. You know, like no, you're not.
No, but I thought that was the point. Is that maybe he's just like basically sheriff of this town or something, but he's declaring himself.
He's just some guy.
Yeah.
Self-appointed.
Yeah, I mean anybody could do that in the Fallout world. But so also so Shady Sands is all destroyed and everything, and like I remembered the name Shady Sands, but I didn't actually remember this either, that that's the first place you get in Fallout 1 too. Like it's not blown up at that point. It's like just a community, and then at some point it gets blown up, and I don't know how that actually happens, if it happens in game or it happens between games. I think I don't know. Maybe it's not until New Vegas that you encounter it again, or because it's in California, I think, or in that vicinity. And Fallout 1 was set like sort of in the Nevada, California area, which Wasteland, that original game back then, that was also set in Nevada. So I think that was the reason for that. But yeah, just funny. It's funny to see all these things that I just totally didn't remember. And it's like, oh shit, that is like way back from Fallout 1.
I thought the ending was really epic. Like, it's like I think maybe for people who are less familiar with the games, but it's like the new California Republic, like, kind of did have its shit together for a little bit. It seemed like lore wise, and then now we're seeing like a different side of that, and that these are like two big power struggles now just going to war with each other. And it was like epic, but also kind of sad, because it's like, oh, there is organized, like it's not complete chaos, and then immediately like these two superpowers just like obliterating each other, and it's like, oh, that's cool, but also really sad.
Well, so apparently, so Kyle MacLachlan at the last shot, he's looking out at New Vegas, right? So does that make you excited to see New Vegas in season 2 based on having played the game?
Oh yeah,
but also sad because New Vegas was not hit by a nuke in New Vegas. Like, it was actually a city, like it was protected, and there are like buildings. But then what Kyle MacLachlan is looking at is like a destroyed New Vegas. So it looks like it's been destroyed since the events of, I could be wrong, but it looks like it's been destroyed.
I think there were destroyed parts of it. I can't really remember, but I mean, I don't remember what he actually saw in the final moments. I mean, I remember the sign, and that's like right when you see that like pretty far out. Before you even really get to the city proper.
For me, I was in
in
Las Vegas like a month ago. So then immediately I'm like, oh no, that's the Stratosphere. Oh, I think that's the Bellagio. Oh boy. So definitely able to pick out some of the casinos from afar. So I'm excited.
Oh, but speaking of the New California Republic, though, like, and this is in the games, but I just love seeing the flag with the two-headed bear. Like, that's just so perfect. It's so like, yes, exactly. That's what the flag should be.
I just wanted to like wake everyone up in my house and be like, oh, look at this, and they'd be like, what are you talking about?
So I don't have one of those. I feel like I should have that prop in my house, because I didn't actually realize the extent of how much Fallout paraphernalia I have. But like, so we have I have a Vault-Tec decal on the back window of my car, and I have a Fallout baseball cap or a Vault-Tec baseball cap. It has the logo on it, and I have a keychain that is my main keychain that I use every day, and it's a Nuka-Cola bottle cap remover. Yeah. So, and it's like, I've had these things for like so long. It's just like I forget that I have them. I probably have something else around here too. But
Pip-Boy keychain actually this week, where it was like, nice. Oh my gosh, like it must have been from some long ago Comic-Con promotion. Where I'm like, maybe it's time to make a little purse storm out of this.
I have a question. Yeah. What is everyone looking forward to in season 2? Because it did get greenlit.
Right.
I want to see the Deathclaw. For sure.
Oh, absolutely.
For me, I just want to see the Ghoul, Lucy, and Dogmeat like being sarcastic and funny with each other, and watching more of Lucy's disillusionment grow as she sees, like, as she wakes up to the state of the world and the power struggles.
Yeah.
You know what I want to see is more power armor. You never get enough power armor.
I was not knocking the power armor itself. That was cool. And I always love practical effects. Everything here looked really, really smooth. They spent, you could tell they spent so much money, and practical effects, like, you know, Mad Max Fury Road, it's practical always looks better.
Yeah.
Always.
I love the power armor, but I do feel like we got a decent amount of it. I mean, especially considering like the Fallout series. Like, there's so many other things. Like in Fallout, you probably see as many super mutants as you see Brotherhood of Steel, like walking tank
you
power
see more.
armor. So like I want to see super mutants, and I think I think there was a super mutant in this show in episode 2. Like, there was something massive on a gurney being
you see like an arm or something.
Yeah, and its hand is really huge. It kind of looks like a Hulk weird looking hand, and I think maybe that might have been a super mutant, or like hinting at a superhuman or a super mutant.
Yeah.
I want to see Zetas too, because there's there's fucking aliens in Fallout. You know, I want to see like
I doubt they're going to go into all that.
Maybe season 3, maybe season 4.
But so I forgot earlier. I was going to say like one of the things that I had thoughts about, like when I first I watched the first episode, and I was like excited about certain things, and like or maybe it was like the first and second one. I can't remember when it came up, but when they laid out the initial plot points, like I was like, okay, so that's dog meat. And then I was like, oh, maybe they're talking about the Garden of Eden creation kit, the GECK, which is from Fallout 3. And it's like, I just fucking love that thing. Ever since playing that game, it's like, oh man, that's such a cool idea.
So the idea
because it's like the big MacGuffin.
Yeah, it's like it restores, it like removes radiation, and like it for like, I don't know, like a square mile or something. So like you could use it to like repopulate the surface and make like an area livable and like farmable. And I want to see more of that. Those things are awesome. Like, I think that's in other Fallout too. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think
I can't remember. But you know, it's like, so cold fusion is cool, of course, but I mean, it's like, oh well, okay. I mean, that could have been in any show. You know, something like the Garden of Eden creation kit, that's like a Fallout thing, and like, so I was like a little disappointed that it's like the big secret that you know was so vital and being smuggled and being hunted after was.
But I think that,
because I mean, cold fusion's like too big of a thing almost to have.
I think the reason they didn't go with a GECK is because every vault is supposed to have one, so they may be super common, even though like America still looks like a wasteland. There's at least 100 of them, right? Because there's like 100 plus vaults, so maybe that's why they were lore wise they didn't want to go with that. That's my guess.
Yeah. I do feel like we kind of saw too many vaults in season 1, given like how sparse they seem to be, like when you play the game, and given how low level like Lucy really still was by the end of the first season. Like I saw somebody, I think they statted her out even, and like she was like remarkably low level. So you know, it's like given that level of advancement, we saw way too many vaults already.
Yeah, this is like our Baldur's Gate 3 conversation all over again.
Well,
but I'm here for that.
Another thing I'm looking forward to in season 2 is more cameos. There were some really great one-off guest stars throughout this series. Matt Berry. Can we take a moment to appreciate Matt Berry and how he elevates
he's so good.
Every goddamn thing he's in with that voice? Unreal.
Yeah, he was perfect as that crazy robot, the crazy medical robot.
And Chris Parnell was great.
Cyclops. Actually, you know, I found his eye really upsetting. And I guess you're supposed to, but like, I don't know. I didn't really love his character that much.
I like when
I generally like that guy.
They turned it around and he's just a good guy.
Exactly. Like your punishment is we are banishing you. Like, oh my god.
Oh, so another quibble. So okay, so when she goes to that vault, they're all like, "Oh, don't go to level 12," and it's like he's like stupid. So it's like, it's kind of a joke that he's like telling her exactly where she needs to go. But like when she gets in the elevator, she just like pushes a button and she gets to go there. And I'm like, well, she doesn't even have to do anything to get to vault 12 or level 12. They didn't block it. And it's like in the game, you would have had to do that weird hacking thing that you can do where like you have to kind of like guess the puzzle phrase or whatever the fuck that is. It took me so long to figure that out.
But we actually literally see her brother doing that like for half the season.
I know. I was gonna say since they actually even did put it in the show, why didn't she have to do that to get into the elevator?
You don't want to do it the same thing twice, though.
She receives no special points for that.
No. Well, I mean, for my money, I would have rather seen her do it in the elevator than have him, do it on the computer. But I guess it was.
But
like,
no, but it sort of made sense because they're so like
was,
good natured and trusting and like everything. It made sense. That
Cameos. Fred Armisen.
Yes.
I think in the last episode, or he's great.
Yeah. Oh, that was hilarious, by the way, that it's like, Maximus gives Lucy the head that they've all been after, and then he just picks up another head that was on the ground to give to the Brotherhood. And it was like, and that was kind of perfect because of how they set it up with all the traps that the guy had.
So I don't remember this lore-wise, but I love how the squires are like caddies. They're just walking around like they're, dragging around golf clubs for a golfer. Yeah. It's so funny to me.
Well, apparently that's a joke in the game because you'll like get a helper character and then you just like give him all your all the inventory to that character so you don't have to carry it. So it's kind of like a winking reference to that.
Oh right, yeah, like
I don't even remember
like Lydia in Skyrim.
Sworn to carry your burdens. The other decal I have on my car is a College of Winterhold decal.
Nice.
So.
That's awesome. All right, so now we know how to spot John on the road.
Yeah.
All right, so we should start wrapping this up pretty soon. So why don't we get into some final thoughts? So, Zach, final thoughts on Fallout Season 1.
I know I had my small quibbles, but like I think pretty much all of that stuff I can just completely look past or will be fixed in a season 2.
In a future patch.
Yeah, in a future patch, in an update, like when they released the episode that was supposed to happen between 6 and 7. Yeah, man, this is as perfect of an adaptation of a video game as what I'm looking for. It's like like Dave said, a miracle that it's this good. It's as expansive as a setting like Star Wars. Like it really feels like there's these factions, there's these speculative elements, there's like your little almost Star Trek-y like mini-sodes where you go into a vault and you find out either tragic things that happened or a weird experiment thing that happened, and you can kind of like just gnaw on the science fiction elements and the weirdness of something momentarily before going back into this extremely expansive setting and now plot and an epic plot. So yeah, really like 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 for me. Like, please make more of this. And sorry that your marketing is bad. I really hope you'll do more capitalistic shit to market this better or something.
How about Teresa? Final thoughts?
Yeah, I thought this was a real win. As someone who's somewhat familiar with the Fallout games, not as much as my fellow panelists, I thought this really stands on its own and introduced this great world with this retro futurism, post-apocalypse, and then the characters. Like some of these characters are really memorable. Like the ghoul is an icon. I cannot wait to watch more of him and Lucy and all the other characters in the next season. I thought it was just the perfect balance between like humor, horror, science fiction, and family drama.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, and again, the concept of Fallout, this juxtaposing of the cheery 50s techno optimism with the post-apocalyptic nuclear war stuff is just a brilliant idea. You know, whoever had that idea in the first place, you know, and it's just
Brian Fargo.
Well, I don't know. I mean, because Tim Kaine was, I don't know exactly who.
Yeah. Whose brainchild?
Because you know,
yeah.
I mean, any video game, there's lots of different people working on.
Sure.
You know, I mean, but that aesthetic is just such a inspired thing, and so just to have a whole TV show built around that, and it just works. Yeah, just the jumping back and forth between the, you know, the past and the future and everything. Just everything is, and it's like the satirical stuff, like everything about it. You know, the corporate satire is just so spot on. It's just, yeah, it's just like a show that it just should not work. Just on paper, you're like, this should not be this good, but it's just somehow it's just, you know, sometimes there's just this alchemy where just magic happens, just kind of, you know, where things just turn out so much better than they have any right to be. And it just seems like that's what happened here. So yeah, definitely hoping the same thing happens in season 2. But so John, final thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, you know, I loved it. You know, I just echo what y'all have been saying. I mean, it's basically a perfect adaptation of a beloved video game series. And so, hey, listen, people, like if you love Fallout and you love to see what people who love Fallout have created, you know, I have a couple of books, you know, I mean, there's Wastelands, there's Wastelands 2, there's Wastelands 3, there's The End Is Nigh. The end has come. The end, or the end is now. The end has come. You know, Loosed Upon the World is kind of post-apocalyptic. I got The Living Dead 2. For Power Armor, there's a book called Armor that I did, and that's pretty cool. I'm just saying, man, I got a lot of material that y'all can delve into if you love Fallout and you just like need more shit in this vein. I have not gotten to edit a Fallout anthology yet, so if anybody who controls the rights to that is listening, I'm down. But otherwise, yeah, no, I mean, I just love the show. I probably will rewatch it. I definitely will rewatch it before season 2 comes out, but,
I hope Todd Howard was listening, because you have not said a bad thing about Todd Howard. And,
Right.
And you just said the invitation is open. So
yeah. Todd Howard, call me.
It's also funny, again, just, you know, how important Fallout has been in the lives of so many people on this panel. And, you know, who would have ever known when you're making a, you know, an computer RPG back in the 90s that, you know, it would have become such a popular thing and influence so many lives. So that's also cool. You just never know when you put some, you know, creative work out into the world, you know, what impact it's going to have decades down the line.
I just want to add one thing. When I was doing one of my essay anthologies, I actually managed to reach out to Brian Fargo, and like I emailed with him, and like that was super cool to me, because I was like, oh my God, it's Brian Fargo. It's like you've mapped the inside of my brain, you know? And so he wasn't able to write an essay for it, or maybe it may have been like asking him to write a story for Wastelands 3 or something like that. I can't remember what it was. But it was just super cool to be able to talk to him.
Yeah.
So, and he was very nice.
Yeah, Brian Fargo, if you're listening, we love you. That's all we're going to say.
Yes. And we should give Brian Fargo some other additional props, because I mentioned the original game Wasteland. He did eventually get the rights to that, and so he made a Wasteland 2 and I think a Wasteland 3 as well.
Wasteland 3 is really good. It's on Xbox Game Pass, and it's very easy to recommend that.
It's just a coincidence that my anthologies are also Wastelands and Wastelands 2 and Wastelands 3, and his games were Wasteland and Wasteland 2 and Wasteland 3. You know, I borrowed that name before I realized that game was going to be like brought back to life and have sequels and stuff. It was like, you know, it was in the dustbin of history. So it seemed safe at the time, but he didn't seem to mind. Yeah. I did tell him about it.
So Brian Fargo, call us, but don't have your lawyer call us, please. All right, so on that note, why don't we wrap things up there? So we've been speaking with John Joseph Adams, Teresa DeLucci, and Zach Chapman. So thanks to everyone so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Okie dokie.
And that was our panel. So big thanks again to John Joseph Adams, Teresa DeLucci, and Zach Chapman for joining us on the show. Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is made possible thanks to support from listeners like you. So if you enjoy the show and want it to continue, please support us on Patreon over at patreon.com/geeks or via PayPal over at geeksguideshow.com/crowdfunding. Alright, so that was our show. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.